This is TWiT.
Well, you are, your history has kind of led you to where you are right now, almost perfectly, in the sense that you didn't have the typical childhood story that people might be used to hearing, right? You had your childhood, lived your childhood in Iraq, devastating circumstances there as a child. Obviously,
Sure.
this shapes you as a human over the years, but also, just kind of stretching that out to this point to where you are managing and maintaining a service that helps protect people in oppressive regimes, wherever they happen to be. Your childhood had to have, hugely informed what you do now. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I was born in northern Iraq. I was born in as a Christian, and as you can tell from my name, Francis, that's a Catholic name. So I was born in a Catholic family, raised as a Catholic, and I was born in northern Iraq. So, and at the time in the 60s, when there was a war between, the Kurdish that want to declare their own independence, and it has been always a problem between northern Iraq and the government. So there was a lot of bombing, obviously, and we used to live in a village, and I remember those days of the bombing, and I was only 5, 6 years old. So we had to escape, and leave all our homes. And during that war, I had a couple of cousins, they were killed. And all I remember, we were just hiding in caves and running away, and then we had to move to Baghdad. And when I moved to Baghdad, when I was a kid, I didn't speak Arabic, even the language, because we spoke a different language at home. So our language is Aramaic, is Assyrian Aramaic. Aramaic is the language of Jesus. So we are the only ancient people who speak actually that language. When I tell people I speak Aramaic, they say, "What? Aramaic? We didn't know that there are people that speak Aramaic." I say, yeah, Aramaic is close to Hebrew, but is actually the language of Jesus. So to Baghdad, and Baghdad obviously now being raised in a whole different environment, and it was pretty tough to see how my parents really struggled there in terms of both in terms of financing, but the other thing, when I was growing up, I was actually always envisioning about, I was very interested in technology. I was very inspired by, I remember those days of the NASA, of launching, and going to the moon. And I was always inspired by when I am going to live in a country that I have a freedom. I can express my views. I can. So we didn't have that. We couldn't criticize the government. We couldn't say anything against the president, and there were spies all over. And if you speak, obviously you spoke against the president or the government, you could be facing jail or even sometimes execution. So it was a very dangerous world to live in. Beside some of the economical struggle and we had when I was growing up, I mean, in some cases we didn't have enough money to pretty much have food on our table. We had, so I had to help my family when I was only 11 years old in Baghdad, selling pretty much individual cigarettes to survive and to have enough money, to survive. But then at the same time, I was very lucky, I guess. I was pretty much, one of the good kid in terms of, going to school and being the first in the class. I had to learn the language from scratch, but at the same time, I was able to, surpass most of my peers and became very interested in math and science, and that was my passion. But I had also another passion, which was music. So I used to play guitar, and I was very rebellious in terms of even learning how to sing Beatles and singing the pops music. And I was very interested in that. And that didn't blend very well in Iraq, didn't blend very well in Baghdad. So at some point when I was in my early 21, I decided that I got to leave this country. This is not the place for me. It doesn't seem that I can blend in, right? I want to pursue my dreams in terms of pursuing the technology, and at the same time the music, the freedom. And so I decided to leave Iraq and escape to Sweden and apply for asylum in Sweden. So I was very lucky to be in Sweden. That was the first country that I basically went to, and I escaped from Iraq. And then after a year, my whole family followed me. I mean, my brothers, sisters, my parents. So that's when I basically went to school there and graduated there, the university in computer engineering. And I was even at the time when I was doing my PhD and at the University in Sweden, Linköping, I was also teaching at the university, teaching, digital filters, computer engineering, computer science, programming languages. So that was very interesting to basically start from a village in northern Iraq, escaping the oppressive regime and come to Sweden and experience the freedom. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, it was very hard for me to kind of envision this. Right. Now, actually, I can criticize the government. I can really express my view, different political views. That was very, very, I felt so free about it. But then I had to learn the language, right? Swedish language. So I managed to learn the language, and pretty much, after that, there was the opportunity of coming to U.S. And that's what I did. I came to U.S. and to Dallas, and I was in my early 31 when I came to Dallas, and I worked for a company called DSP Technologies and start programming, and that's when I started my career, and eventually worked for companies like DSE Communications, Ericsson, and so on. But then I had the dream of basically starting my own venture. That's when I basically ventured into coming to Silicon Valley and Bay Area in the early 90s when I started my first venture. So it was very interesting, basically mission, and very interesting journey for me and in my life. So.
I mean, the entire story that you kind of laid out, there's so many components to this. And I think what
Sure.
I keep kind of coming back around to is this idea that as a child, you had to make sense of chaos, because that's the world that you were surrounded by was this
absolutely.
chaotic world. And through that, you had passion and you had this drive, this entrepreneurial spirit selling cigarettes. I know from what I understand, I was able to find some, you talking about the selling cigarettes in I think it was a podcast or an article online, where you would buy a pack of cigarettes with pretty much the last money that you had, that your family had, and then you would sell them individually and be able to make the money off of that. And I mean, that just goes to show about like your creativity, your creative thinking around entrepreneurship, and man, just having the strength and the drive to do that as a child, and then what that leads to, like, it takes a lot of right steps to make it where you did through all of that chaos and through all of that uncertainty.
I think if you have a lot of passion for particular things in your mind, and you're so focused on it, and the passion you have, it doesn't matter what happens around you, because there was a lot of things happening around me. Of course, I have to think outside the box. I say, well, how are we going to survive with this? Okay, take a pack of cigarettes and buy it for a certain amount of the money, and then sell individual cigarettes. And so that, I made profit out of it, right? Almost double. I was making 100%, 200% profit.
And that was like a light bulb.
Yeah.
Ding.
Wow.
Oh,
wow.
You can do
I
that.
can do that. I can do that. But you see, when you're so focused, I mean, even in Baghdad, there were instances where they were hanging in the street. Like government used to kill people on the street. It bothered me. Of course, it bothered me, and I was very bothered. But it didn't really got to me in terms of my focus, because my focus was basically, there is a better life for me. I need to focus on my school. I need to focus on this. And that's what I had the passion for, because I had that hunger of learning more, exploring more, and finding more. So it was never ending for me, and nothing really bothered me in a way. For me, everything around it was noise, pretty much. And that's really, I see that an entrepreneur, how it is right now, how you have to think. You cannot think about all these problems as problems. You have to think about a problem as an opportunity. How are you going to find a solution for a problem?
Yeah.
So for me, that's how I'm wired. When I see a problem, whether it's in the marketplace, whether it's a problem economical, whether it's a political problem, okay, how can we solve it? Right? I mean, the things when it happened right now with the fire and lately the fire we have, right? I was thinking actually, how can we solve that problem? I think we have all the components of the technology. Maybe it's a huge project, but there is a way we can solve this problem and we can improve it. So that's how I'm wired. You know, nothing really bothers me in terms of everything around me it just basically, if there are negative things, it's noise, right?
Yep.
And I pretty much ignore it and I focus more on the positive aspects of my life.